Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast. But if you could give us a 5-star rating and a positive review, like on Apple and that would be so awesome. And I would owe you so much because it just helps us spread the word out on the internet. It's how the internet works these days. Also, don't forget, look us up on YouTube, all right, because we got a video stream of this episode of the podcast, and we got video streams of everything else up there too. So look it up. Look up my YouTube channel, Dan Casper. Remember, that's Casper with a K. On this episode of the podcast, we're going to talk about the NFL schedule release, in particular how it relates to the Packers schedule release. So that is officially out there now, and I don't want to do records, like predicting records or anything like that, because it's still middle of May, and not to be all doom and gloom, but there's possibly, and it's not a guarantee, but it's possible some things could still happen. You hope there's not an injury in preseason or such. It's just I'm not ready to do a record prediction right now. So I'm not going to do that, but I do want to kind of take a look at my overall impressions of how this schedule was laid out. Now, for one, we knew who the opponents were. We knew who was going to be home. We knew who was going to be away. We knew that back in January, right? So that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody of who we play. But what the schedule release does, it obviously gives us dates now, but do we have any back-to-backs? Where's there some long travel stretches, some home stretches? How do they finish the season? Where's the primetime games, the bye week especially? When it comes to the schedule, the things that I look at are, the bye week for sure. Where do the dome or warm weather teams, when do they come to Green Bay? Where are the division games lined up, especially for Green Bay this year too, because of that NFC North being so ridiculously good? I feel like is going to be the best division in football this year. So where do those division games line up? The primetime games. And I think something that has to be part of the, factoring this in for a lot of people now is, is it on a certain streaming platform? Because not everybody has Netflix. Not everybody has Peacock. Not everybody has Amazon and such. So I think that's a factor for a lot of people now is like, oh, do I got to sign up for a free trial? Do I have the streaming service? Do I got to pay for it for a month just to watch one game in that? That's a factor in this now too. So those, and for me personally too, I always look at, for the opening weekend of deer hunting in Wisconsin in November, where do the Packers play? Because then I got to adjust my schedule based where in terms of time and such, so I could adjust my schedule there. But with all that being said, looking at this schedule for Green Bay, it starts off with Detroit. I know there's some fans who are upset that it's a division game right away to open it up and that. But I'm going to look at it with a little bit of a glass half full approach here with Detroit in particular. Detroit doesn't have Ben Johnson as their offensive coordinator. They have a brand new defensive coordinator as well. They've lost some assistant coaches because of Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn taking head coaching jobs elsewhere. Dan Campbell's still there, and a lot of the great players are still there. There's no question about it. But if there was an opportunity to maybe go up against Detroit while they're still, kind of figuring out things with their new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, kind of still getting a feel with each other, I'd rather play Detroit early and take advantage of that if there's going to be some growing pains with some new voices, with new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. I'd rather play them early and take advantage of that possibility rather than later on in the season where maybe the players are more comfortable or they're kind of on the same page with the new coordinators and such. So I don't have a problem. Yes, it's a tough game. And yes, I would like to have Detroit late December, cold weather and such. But factoring in the new coordinators and that, if they're not going to be quite in sync, I'd rather take advantage of that. So I don't have a problem necessarily with that. I don't have a problem with that. Maybe you'd rather go to Detroit earlier in the season and take advantage of that. Okay, that's fair. But facing Detroit right away, I want to take advantage of maybe them not quite being on the same page. Maybe they are, and maybe that whole point's going to be mute and such. But right now, I don't have a problem with that. I know some fans do. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Can't shy away. We know division's going to be tough, and we knew Green Bay's schedule was going to be tough regardless. We knew the opponents already. So you're going to have to play them at some point. You can make cases for and against whether it's early or later on. Yes, you have the quick turnaround. Thursday night, the first Thursday night game of the season outside of the opener, I guess, because that's a Thursday night game. But, this one's going to be on Prime, and it's against the Commanders. And I know there's fans upset about that it's a quick turnaround. And it's the Commanders, another playoff team. I look at it this way. Again, maybe it's just me being glass half full type of approach. But I look at it as I'd rather have this Thursday game earlier in the season because my assumption is bodies are going to be fresher. It's different than, maybe playing your Thursday game week 10 where you're already halfway through the season and maybe guys are really banged up and now you have a short week to go play a Thursday night game. I'd rather maybe get it done with right away while assuming, guys are still fresh coming off of training camp and preseason. They're not in the full grind of the football season yet. And, yes, you're going to be coming off of a tough game against Detroit and such. I understand that. But I don't mind the quick turnaround. Get it done with. And I look at it from, I'm assuming the guys are going to be a little bit more fresher and hopefully less injury riddled. Injuries are going to happen. We know that's going to happen. But I don't mind that either. I don't mind that either. Two very tough games to open up the season. No question about that. But this is also an opportunity for Green Bay to start off 2-0 in conference play, which I'm assuming tiebreakers are going to be a key thing when it comes to the NFC, when it comes to the NFC North. So they have an opportunity to get off to a really good start, but they also have that opportunity to dig themselves into an early hole here too with those first two games. Then they go to Cleveland. Again, early situation for Cleveland. Who the heck's the quarterback going to be over there? Green Bay might be able to take advantage of that. You got Dallas going to Dallas for Sunday night. Brand new head coach in Dallas. Maybe they're still trying to figure out things too. New wide receiver with Pickens and Dak Prescott in that. So I think there's a good opportunity for Green Bay to start off fast this season. It's going to be tough. But if they could get those first two wins against Detroit and Washington, and I think they'll be favored against Cleveland and Dallas, there's an opportunity here for Green Bay to start off fast and get into that bye week. Yes, the bye week at week 5 is early. Everybody wants it in the middle of the season, around week 8, week 9. Everybody wants that. But a lot of times it always tends to work out when we get to that point. We're like, oh, gosh, yeah, it did work out. Glad we have the bye week here because so-and-so is injured and, they wouldn't be able to play this week, but they'd be able to play in a couple weeks. So we're going to get them back after the bye week. I'm counting on that. That's not a foregone conclusion. You'd like to see it a little bit later on, but, get through your first 4 games, kind of reset, right? First 4 games, first quarter of the season. You can reset and then prepare for a huge game after your bye week at Lambeau going up against the Bengals in that offense. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. So get that bye week to get set for that game. And then you've got your longest travel stretch here. You got at Arizona for week 7. Then you're at Pittsburgh for week 8. Another primetime game here. And I guarantee you that's a primetime game because, yes, it's 2 iconic franchises. Yes, they matched up in Super Bowl 45, but there is the assumption that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that, to me, is why this game is solely a Sunday night football game. And I still believe that it would have been Green Bay versus Pittsburgh and Ireland this year. But the fact that Aaron could be the quarterback for the Steelers, I think that they pivoted to the Vikings then. So, but you look at that week 7, week 8 essentially is the longest travel stretch for Green Bay. They're in the bottom third in terms of the amount of miles teams have to travel this year. But really that's at Arizona and then you go to Pittsburgh. You follow that up with Carolina at home and then a big Monday night game against Philly. That's going to be a tough one because Philly's going to be coming off their bye week for that one. Okay, so they've got the week 9 bye. They got that bye that everybody likes. So they're going to have that extra week to kind of prepare for Green Bay. That's going to be a tough game. No question about it. Then you go to the Giants. And then starting week 12, I believe really is the teeth of this schedule where this is going to be a really tough finish. So it sets up, though, this whole schedule I think sets up where Green Bay has to start fast and they have to finish fast, which you would think is the perfect recipe for a deep postseason run. But week 12, Minnesota at Lambeau. For whatever reason, it feels like all the time It's not all the time. I know it's not. But more times than not lately, it's been Minnesota coming to Green Bay on the Sunday of opening Deer weekend. Feels like they always schedule Packers-Vikings for that. And it's frustrating as all get out because now I got to adjust my schedule. But that's a tough game. It's going to be a tough game. First time the Packers will be taking on Minnesota for that season, for this season. So you have that. And then it's followed up with a short week, Thanksgiving at Detroit. So, I mean, that, and then after that Detroit, you get a little bit of a mini bye week because of Thanksgiving. You got Chicago for the first time. So, I mean, 3 straight division opponents. 2 of those 3 you're facing for the first time in these final 7 games. And then after that, you go to Denver, a playoff team from last year. And then you go to Chicago after that for a Saturday game. And then you finish up with Baltimore at home. Baltimore ain't going to be scared about the elements. I was actually hoping this game would be earlier on because nobody wants to tackle a big bruising running back when it's cold. Baltimore's got a pretty good one with Derrick Henry. They also have a really good running quarterback in Lamar Jackson. Teams want to run the ball when it's cold. That's why I was kind of hoping Baltimore would be playing earlier on. That's not the case. It's week 17 on the schedule for Green Bay. That's going to be a tough game. And then you finish up at Minnesota, which who knows what that could decide. So, I mean, those final 7 games, Minnesota, at Detroit, Chicago, at Denver, at Chicago, Baltimore, at Minnesota, that is a brutal, brutal way to wrap up your season. Overall, this is a tough schedule. We knew it was going to be a tough schedule. We knew the opponents. We knew who was home. We knew who was away. But if you want to be a contender, you want to be a Super Bowl contending team, you got to win these games. I don't want to hear a whole lot of excuses about, well, early bye week. Oh, we got to go, Washington second week. Use it to make yourself better as a team and use it to help you make a deep postseason run and get into the championship. All right. Winners don't make excuses. Winners just go out there and win. All right. Go out there and just win and take care of business. All right. You need a little luck on your side too. There's no doubt about it. You need some luck when it comes to the injury department. It's a tough schedule. I don't get into the whole strike the schedule right now because things change from one year to the next. Strike the schedule right now is based off of last year's records. Things are changing. Things have changed for a lot of these teams. So I don't get into that too much. So with that being said, it's a very tough schedule, but it's going to be, I think, very important for Green Bay to start off fast, but also finish fast. Start off with some wins against some NFC opponents, and you're going to have to finish fast to maybe win the division or make that playoff run. All right, that's going to do it for us on this quick episode of the Man Cave Podcast. Don't forget again to follow and subscribe to the Man Cave Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. If you could, give us a nice 5-star rating and a positive review like on Apple. That way others can find the podcast. Until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I will talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee in Eau Claire.